Those two, your title. Maybe that's what that means. You know, your hand as to
I can't do it.
as opposed to that again. You have to have it, but move that whole Zoom thing out, yeah. Because you want to get there. Where you're looking. You two learn from some. I'm trying to look at it now.
Yes, we can angle it a little bit down. I think it's good there, but just a bit higher, just halfway between those two. Yeah, that looks good. Oh, my head is tiny. Innocent.
Your head's down. That's how you want to look. Make your hair look more white, though, doesn't it? It's amazing. It's like I'm looking at your hair going, well, is it fighting? It's not even your hair, it's just like
Can you just go to light under?
washing it out.
Hello, Tracy.
Hey, Gale.
Hey.
Hi, I had a new camera. I was just trying the setup, so I jumped in early.
There are pros and cons to having a new camera. Mine is 4K, and so I consider that a con because I'm like, I don't want to do that high def.
Yeah, no, so it's like, I'll try this, but I'm not sure. I might just go back to the laptop one.
Yeah, yours sounds a little crackly. I'm not sure if it's me or if it's something is up. You're
It's
usually very clear and you're crackly today.
Can you hear me now? I've just
Yeah,
changed microphones.
That's a little bit better. That's a little louder. I don't know what. Usually you're very crisp and clear, and there's like a little like extra noise to it today. But you are clearer now.
Yeah, I hear the crackling as well, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of crackling. Oh no.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey.
Other Tracy was here, but she had her internet's doing a thing, so she's rebooting and she'll be back in a moment.
Okay. Our internet was doing a thing yesterday. We were having all kinds of problems.
Oh, I can relate. I think just everyone's using up all the internet on their Zoom calls at the same time every morning.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on. I know a lot of my niece, who's got 3 at home on the internet, she said only 2 of them could get on. So something's going on. Maybe something regional. Who knows?
Yeah, where I live, my house is from the 80s, so our internet, all our equipment is old. But it's not so old that they're going to replace everything, but it's not new. So it's kind of in a weird stage where like these kind of replace little things. And since we live in a neighborhood where everyone's retired, not everyone reports issues. So we were kind of in charge of that, getting checked out to repair hardware in the neighborhood. My husband's like, okay, I have a script and it's dropping like UDP every 40 minutes.
Yeah, I get that. Yes.
You're like, okay, I guess we're in charge of troubleshooting for you guys.
Hey, Steve. Hey, Sasha.
There.
Hi, James.
Hello there.
Oh, Rubes. My tea has gotten cold. I'm going to go reheat it.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hello. Good to see you all.
Hey, Vivek.
Hey, Tracy, James.
Hey, good to see you.
A small
Hey.
world, huh?
Hi.
I'm looking for Dan Gale. Oh, there he is. Speak of the devil. Just here.
And Tracy's gonna be right back.
Hello.
Perfect. Hey, Dan. Got some more talk folks joining. Great.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Zach. Some nice looking sunshine you have there.
It is. I'm in Austin. I'm traveling to the East Coast. So I think Dan Lorenc lives here.
Yep. How's it going?
I'm good, man. Where are you at right now? What part of what? I'm on Havana Street. I know nothing about Austin.
I don't know where that is. I live in Westlake, so it's just west of like downtown.
Okay.
A bunch of people. Guess we can get started. I will present. Cool. So this is November 10th, or I think I saw somewhere on Twitter, March 274th, depending on how you're counting. So yeah, we've got a couple topics today. If anybody wants to address anything not here in the agenda, go ahead and add it. First one is feedback and move to a vote on the Ortelius proposal. There's also another proposal here to create a best practices SIG with the pull request linked. We can do a little update on the project updates that were just included in the newsletter. I think Tracy has some cool stats and discuss how to keep collecting those going forward. We Got a couple of white papers here, and then I guess just I was hoping to have a little bit of a discussion on the pending Docker Hub changes and see if any projects are worried they're going to be impacted by those. I don't have any real idea on what we can do about that, but maybe we can brainstorm or come up with something if anybody is worried. With that, I guess we can get started on the Ortelius proposal. Let me open that one up and switch screens. So here is the proposal. It's been out since the last one where we discussed it and went over most of the questions, I guess. So is there anything else anybody would like to chat about here before we move to a vote and talk? This is the one kind of contingent point that we talked about before, changing the license, but I guess we've discussed that that can be done contingent on the vote. I'm happy with that. Anyone? Everyone's happy?
I'm happy. I was
All
happy
right.
on the second revision.
Cool. Yeah, I think this is a great proposal as well. All right then. So Tracy, you wanted to coordinate this a little bit with PR, is that correct? What kind of schedule and time frame would we like to see on that for this vote?
Yeah, so I think if you're kicking off the vote and allowing at least a couple of weeks, I think one of the things I noted was the video from the last TOC meeting where they had the discussion. We haven't made that available yet, so I think we need to just get that resolved. So if we leave a decent amount of time for folks to see that and do the voting, then it gives us time as well. I think we need 2 or 3 weeks just to line everything up if we're going to be announcing this.
Sorry, was someone else trying to say something?
So in short, if you want to go ahead and kick off a vote, yeah, if we can allow at least 2 weeks for folks to give their input, and then probably just another week behind the scenes to pull things together.
All right. I'll kick off the vote right after this meeting.
Great.
If people aren't familiar, the vote will take place on the TOC mailing list. Anyone is welcome to participate, but the votes are only binding from TOC members. So you should see that fly by right after this. All right, next one is the best practices proposal. I think Tara had a couple questions about this in Slack. Is Mauricio here who submitted this?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Do you want to present and talk through this, or I can keep my screen sharing and you can talk? It doesn't look like it's too long, so we shouldn't have to scroll.
No, it's not too long, so I will just keep it simple. So the main idea before this SIG is just to collect and to present these best practices and just call to a broader audience and a broader people participating into collecting these best practices and create material around it to make sure that we promote whatever companies or members are experiencing out there in the field, just to collect that together and just push to make sure that we all share this knowledge and promote that knowledge sharing across different members. So yeah, I'm super interested in the topic. I am writing some stuff around it. So I thought, okay, this might be a good idea. And with Tracy, we think that it might be good to kickstart right now. So we need to find some sponsors, Tracy, I think. Yeah.
Yes, and yeah, just to echo what Marich is saying, super excited about this. I think the SIG is almost kind of the reason CDF should exist, which is all about helping people figure out, best practices around continuous delivery and emerging practices as things change, as technology shows up. And we've got really good support at the board level. So like Michael Galloway of Netflix has agreed to be the kind of exec sponsor for this effort. I think from his experience at Netflix, they say they often have folks coming to them saying, you know, how can we be the next Netflix? What does it take? And sometimes it's important for folks to be able to, you know, either understand their risk profile or their attitude to developers or the size of their teams. So just trying to give folks a framework to sort of evaluate themselves and then sort of say, what do they need to do to continuously improve and get better at different things. So yeah, we are looking for a TOC sponsor who will kind of be the liaison for this group. And yeah, just in general for folks to get involved and to sign up and attend the first meeting.
So I have a lot. Okay, so first of all, love the idea. I had been kicking around an idea similarly about a year and a half ago. Here is my concern, and maybe we can try and figure out how to mitigate it.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like this can, one, be super political in the broader communities. If you think about some of the communities around like resiliency engineering as a concept, or the whole kerfuffle that Tracy, you and Christy and Jez have kicked off around the whole CI part of CI/CD. Like, there's a lot of schools of thought around this sort of thing. And so for us to come in and say that we are defining a set of best practices that are sort of broadly encompassing industry standards, there's the potential for negative backlash, first of all, which obviously would not be good for the foundation. And then secondly, there was the reference to accelerate as part of that. And I want to point out the immense amount of work and like really critical research and like all of the processes around that went into that. And so, you know, are we going to hold ourselves to the same or even approaching similar standards for how we collect and analyze data in order to back up claims like Accelerate did? That's a pretty big claim and would be, I think, hard to do on a volunteer basis. And then finally, you know, it may be that a lot of really interesting best practices are already available. Do we, or you know, part of other ongoing discussions, and how do we become part of those discussions in a way that is positive and well received, as opposed to like, no, we want to have our versions of those documents that we're hosting in our repository kind of thing, right? So these are all things that I don't think are deal breakers, but the sorts of things that I was thinking about heavily when the last time this idea came up, and I didn't come up with any good ideas. It was a lot of work. So I feel like we need to address at least some of these a little bit more thoroughly as part of this, because like I said, I love the idea, but this is definitely one where there's a big devil in these details.
Yeah, so I'm happy to kind of jump in and answer some of your questions or address some of the concerns, or just tell you what I think the approach is.
You're the boss.
So cool. Yeah, so okay, so first of all, like you're referring to the CI and CD and kerfuffle, like
I was just giving an example. Like, there's a lot of discussions in general, and like, you know, how do we come into this space in a positive way?
So totally. Now, I think some of these discussions, like particularly on terminology, which I think is independent of this effort, but I'll just address it because I think we could end up in similar discussions. So I think it's really important that CDF does take a stance in terms of what certain terms mean and how we're seeing things. And this has been very obvious in the interoperability group, where we'd often have discussions and people after a while would realize that they're talking at cross purposes because we didn't have a shared definition. So it's not so much that CDF will be looking to sort of, you know, dictate to the industry how people should be seeing things, but we should certainly internally have an alignment on terms, so that if we come into like the interoperability group and we're saying, okay, we're discussing this level of integration or this level of standardization, here's what we mean by X, Y, and Z. So that's kind of where all the things we've had on the definition front come out. Now, specifically on best practices, I do agree that, you know, we're not looking to do kind of the rigorous data collection, kind of that standard of practices, but the reality is that's already been done by the Accelerate book. So, and what this proposal says is we want to use that as the basis. The folks there have already mapped out 24 capabilities. These are things that, you know, have been scientifically proven, but the reality is that most people, one, don't know they exist, and two, don't know how to kind of measure themselves up against them. And we had someone else in one of these discussions. I was hoping he could be here, but I hope he will get involved with the best practices. But for example, if you take something like one of the capabilities is use version control. If you're someone new to the space, or even regardless of what level you are, there's different levels to say, what does use version control mean? So you might have everything on one laptop. You might be using a system that isn't distributed. Then we can say, okay, most people today, the best practice is to use distributed version control. And then the leading edge of adopters are using kind of webhooks and automation and GitOps. So it's kind of breaking each thing down into different levels of like not
adoption or maturity.
Yeah, I don't want to say maturity model, but
yeah,
kind of different levels of where
It's
you
okay.
are. And
You can say maturity model.
okay, let's say maturity model, but not
Yeah.
sort of fixed level. So an evolving one. And then we're saying, okay, here is where most people in the industry are. They're all at this stage. So if you haven't adopted, say, a distributed version control system, actually you need to see that your team or your company is kind of behind the curve, and there may be good reasons for that. So this is not about kind of shaming people, but it is about a way of saying, okay, how do you peg yourself against each of these 24 things? And as people, you know, as the tooling becomes available to make each thing easier, how do you get to a continuous improvement cycle and bring your team along with you?
Sure, and that makes total sense. But my point is, like, there is a wealth of, that's a great example, actually, is whether or not you should use version control, right? There is a wealth of data and books and blog posts that are already out there that talk about this kind of stuff. So I guess my question is, you know, what are we bringing through this effort that is unique, right? Or are we just going, is the idea that we just want to have some kind of voice in the discussion? I guess that's, I'm really trying to understand, like, what are the outcome that we're hoping to get through this? So put another way, like, do we want to say, if we're going to focus on Accelerate and the DORA research, do we want to say that part of this means that we will instrument, or that part of a project implementation for a CDF project involves DORA instrumentation for the 4 keys measurements? Do we want to, and you know, CloudBees has that as part of a product. My team actually recently released a small open source version of that, for example. Do we want to say that we want to focus on, here's how you do best practices using our stuff in variations? So for example, here's how you hook up, you know, Tecton, Spinnaker, GitHub, or GitLab. Like, do we want to try and have a focus that way? And this is the kind of thing I think I would love to see a little bit more sort of intention, I guess,
so
as part of this.
I would actually say it's deliberately not prescriptive, because I think there's 3 or 4 different ways we could go with this, and it almost depends who's going to show up into the room to have those discussions. So, you know, this could be what is the best way to implement GitOps? It could be that narrow, or it could be you mentioned, you know, and like some of the things we're hearing from our members. So Fidelity joined the other day, and their approach is, you know, they want to be able to say, what is the difference in how you approach continuous delivery in a 200 people team versus a 20,000 people company? So I think I'd love to not be prescriptive at this time, but it's almost this kind of conversation that I want to dedicate a space and time for people to come together and sort of say, how can we start driving clarity in this space? How can we start saying, these are the things we know you should be doing and there's no debate about them, and these are the things which are emerging and the jury is out and different people are approaching it in different ways, and this is the things they're considering when they do those things.
Yeah, so I could say from the Spinnaker side, you know, Tara, you were mentioning, I think that there's the kind of what's the research and the behaviors and processes that are abstracted of, like, and you know, if you look at the book Accelerate, they don't talk about really tools very much in that book, right? I think if you look at what we're doing here is kind of trying to apply those best practices that may come from Accelerate or whatever we decide to agree on, and apply to the tools within inside of the CDF and help guide, I think, the tools to either adhere or help people accomplish the best practices that we agree on. And I think, Tracy, you just mentioned another really good point, which is like, there's going to be things that is unanimous, like we're like, hey, this is obviously the best standard. And there's going to be like gray areas where it's like some of us do, and then there's going to be other areas where it's like none of us agree, and like here's all the stuff that's emerging, that's very new. Yeah, exactly, right. So there's going to be and so I think it'd be incredibly helpful, I think, for the industry, that it's like, okay, good, I have all these learnings from Accelerate. Now, how do I implement those with the tools in the world today? Right. And I think that's where, at least my experience is that a lot of people are stumbling, where they know what they want from those books that have incredible amount of fantastic research, Tara, as you pointed out. It's just like, now, how do I make this a reality with what's out there in the world today? Or can I even make it a reality, right? Like, for example, Spinnaker doesn't support those metrics, the 4-door metrics that are in there, but there might be other tools that do. And if those metrics are the things that you're really going after, then we should be able to highlight one of the tools in our foundation that helps them accomplish that goal. Or maybe it's chaos engineering, or maybe it's whatever that practice may be that they're after, or that is their top priority. Because I think that book sets, and among many books, not just that book, but among many books, sets a kind of a general direction, but isn't just like a plan of action, right? So that's where I think we can fill in the gap. I think that's where our role is. I think I'm just kind of doubling on what you said, Tara, that I personally believe in that kind of mission.
So, right, okay. And to be clear, like, I'm not hostile to this, but I want us to be very thoughtful about the approach, right? So let's go back to chaos engineering and best practices. So let's take that as an example. If we engage in some form of assessment around resiliency and chaos engineering, and Nora Jones, as one example, is not part of that conversation, right? Or, oh God, what was the name of the other author of that book? I'm totally blocking. Anyway, what sort of legitimacy do we bring to it in a general sense, right?
Agreed.
But if we're able to speak to it in, maybe if the focus was around case studies, like if, we had some of the members who are like, okay, we're going to give this a shot. Here's how it went down. Here's the postmortem of the aftermath, and how successful were we or not, weren't we? That could be really interesting. I guess I'm trying to frame like a maximum beneficial context that the CDF could be in this space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean that's an excellent point. I think it points out either like I by no means am a chaos engineering expert. I know what it is, and I know how to poke a few buttons in a couple tools, but I'm no means an expert. But I think maybe there's two ways of looking at this, which is one, it either shows that there's a gap in experience within inside of the CDF, that we need to bring in people like Nora and Casey Rosenthal, who also.
Thank you, Casey.
Yeah. Right. So we need to bring those folks into the fold so that they're helping us produce it, or we advise with them and in a kind of advisorship capacity where they're kind of signing off on what's here. Right. So like I think you're just kind of bringing up like other kind of really important issues that we have to address as a group, as a foundation, really.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd love to hear anyone else's thoughts.
Yeah, I've been speaking a lot. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
This is Steve from Deploy Hub. I've seen some of the ways this is handled is like you were saying, Tara, where it's a series of case studies that you may have one or two, maybe 3 case studies around a specific topic. So you can kind of get a feel for what a GitOps is going to look like, or, how to use Git version control for a small team, a medium team, and a large team. And they're just case studies that kind of give you the lay of the land of that type of topic. And that may be one way to kind of back up what you're talking about, because I don't think there's going to be one size fits all solution.
There never is.
I think you said the magic word there that I'm interested in, at least as part of this, Steve, which is case studies. Case studies by definition are non-controversial. They're useful to everyone. Every conference I've been to, the busiest rooms are the companies providing case studies on how they're doing these things. And my favorite talk every year at KubeCon is the one from Reddit, where they just talk about what they're currently doing with Kubernetes and delivery and how they've put all these pieces everyone has delivered together. And kind of providing a safe space for companies to share what they're doing as case studies and kind of distill out what the best practices are from there.
And you can make the case studies, you can remove the company name and stuff like that. You could go large financial company, whatever, so it's not tying, into the legal rigmarole of trying to get approvals done from to use a company name.
Unless they want to, because they're
True.
very well could be hey, look how awesome we are. We're CDF members and we do case studies.
Yeah.
Some
Right.
people do, some people
Yeah.
want to, and then they get in front of the lawyers, and then 3 years later, they've still haven't gotten out of the gate.
And on putting my open source hat on, I want to put out there that we have, and I keep talking about them, we have ambassadors that are not, we're not leveraging. And I would very much like to see a way to do that. Now, I think that we could, if we really wanted to come up with best practices, I think we have to come up with and sort of from a special interest group at work effort. My suggestion would be we come up with the chapters. We come up with a high level, what areas are we going to cover? And we allow the ambassadors to either create a case study around that, or we also could have them create a POC, a standard POC that outlines for this particular discipline, whether it be continuous test or continuous integration or version control, we build a common POC out. I know we started working on personas in the Ortelius project, and that made a logical, it was like, oh, we have these personas. How are these personas impacted by the problem set that we're solving? And so we just started to write out a POC for the problem set. So I feel like if we're going to do this, we should give it some structure, and we should open our arms and get the ambassadors involved, because there's some really smart people out there and they're not being leveraged.
Well, that's a good point. I like that idea. I hate to ask Marky, though. He seems to be already attached to everything.
So I want to share some reflection from Fatih, by the way. I joined IEEE conference like 2 weeks ago, and there was a workshop there, industry workshop, and presented CDF and focused on interoperability. And we had a long conversation after the workshop, more than an hour. And there were many people who were actually asking the questions the best practices SIG aims to address partially. Like there were questions like maturity model, or what are the best practices when it comes to how to do CI. So I think one of the contributions this SIG could make is to bring those people to one place, perhaps CDF. That is why CDF is there, to bring people together and collaborate and discuss these things. So like, even though we forget about what this group may end up achieving, just bringing those people to one forum and letting them talk about those things is pretty valuable, because my feeling was like those people, even though they were pretty competent in CI/CD stuff, they didn't know who else is working with these things. So yeah, I don't know if Tracy, I don't know if you met with those people, but that was my feeling, and I simply pointed them to CDF. And having best practices special interest group would allow more people to come and take part in the conversations.
Okay, so we've had a feedback discussion here. Do we want to? Sorry, go ahead, Tara.
I was just going to say, you know, obviously I have opinions, and I love the concept. I will be happy to volunteer myself as a sponsor.
And keep us honest on the way, Tara.
I want us to be awesome.
Exactly, we need it. Good, tough questioning.
All right, so I guess at a minimum, we've got to fill in your name in that pull request, and I think there's probably other changes and tweaks we can make to it based on the discussion we've had so far. Once that's ready, do you want to send an email to the talk list, Mauricio, and then we can do another wave of feedback or move to a vote?
Yeah, we can do that. Definitely.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mauricio.
Okay.
Thank you, Tara.
So I was going to add, I think, I don't know if it says this in the proposal, but like just to, if we are kicking off the conversations, I think we had a proposal that we would start that next Monday, and just have a session where like this conversation carries on and we talk about, you know, how do we frame it? What are the end bits, end outputs? Yeah. What are the outputs we want to see, and who wants to help drive that?
8 a.m. on a Monday, people are killing me.
8 a.m. Is that when
Remember,
we had
I'm West
Mauricio?
Coast. Yes. All right, I will be there.
So yeah, if anyone wants to continue this discussion, which I think is really good, we'll send out the talk and put it in the CDF calendar. Actually, it might already be there.
All right, next one here, let me switch back over to the agenda, is the newsletter. So I want to thank everyone for getting their updates in that doc for the first monthly update. Do you have some stats on that, Tracy?
I do not actually, so we don't have them yet, but I do have the archive version of the newsletter is up on the website, so I encourage folks to check that out. And we should have some stats by the end of the week, so in time for the next meeting. But yeah, we had some really good feedback that it looked really good, and lots of content just in terms both from CDCon and also from project updates. So thanks for all the effort folks put into that.
Cool. Yeah, so based on Rosalind's suggestion, I reorganized the doc to collect updates a little bit. So added a December section here with the same projects, so people can kind of add things in here each week or whenever they think of them to keep it rolling, so it's not like a rush at the last minute. But the December newsletter cutoff is the 26th of November, so we've got a couple more weeks, and I'll send out recurring reminders to add things in here as people think of them. It's been a great way, at least from the Tecton side. We had some people mention they called that updates in our Slack and come up and try out some of the new stuff we mentioned. So hopefully it provides some value to the other projects as well. And then hopefully we'll have an Ortelius section in here soon too. Next, switching back, the Docker Hub stuff. Docker Hub again. I know the Jenkins community was investigating this a little bit. They were concerned some of the images they publish on Docker Hub are going to be affected by the new quota changes. I don't know if any of the other projects were. I think Tecton had some stuff in the catalog, some of the community images in the catalog hosted on Docker Hub, and we're figuring out alternative homes for them. I don't really have any great answers here. If people aren't familiar, Docker Hub is kind of changing their quota and billing model so that people have to be logged in and signed up in order to download things with high enough rate limits. So a bunch of CI systems are going to start falling over as these changes roll out, unless projects get into the allow list for Docker Hub. So there is a way to apply as an open source project to get your images unblocked and not affected by the rate limiting, but I don't know if anybody's actually successfully gone through that yet.
I think Jenkins project have. I think they just got accepted.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I saw the emails about the application, and I think last I heard, people were concerned because they had heard nothing yet.
Yeah, I think it took about 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, so Screwdriver also did apply for that. I think we had back saying it's accepted, but we haven't tried that out yet. I guess all Screwdriver containers are published in the Docker Hub. And even when we run our builds, it can pull from Docker Hub. So I'm just trying to figure out what it means. Is it just for our published containers, or whenever, if you are logged in as that open source user, is the rate limiting not applied? So that's something to figure out.
Hey, Jathan, your mic is a little quiet. Just an FYI.
Sorry about that. Is it better now?
Yeah.
I'm actually outside. Oh yeah, so I was saying that Screwdriver did apply for that open source application, and it did go through, but I haven't tried it out yet because all the Screwdriver containers are published in Docker Hub, and I'm not quite sure what does it mean. Like, is it just your own containers being pulled from Docker Hub, or is it when you are logged in as that user? Are you exempted from the rate limiting? So but so far we haven't seen anything like if they are really enforcing it.
Cool. So it sounds like at least people are hearing back on the application, which is better news than I had last time I looked into this. We can set up, if people want to move off of Docker Hub to something else and need billing, we could look into credits and moving things to some of the other registries. Tecton mostly uses GCR, paid for out of the CDF budget. What does Jenkins X do while you're here, James?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. So currently, because we're going through this kind of a big effort at the moment, so we're close to a beta for Jenkins X3, which is quite big. It's a big deal for us. We changed the way we're actually building and the number of images and how we're actually using our images as well. So for Jenkins X2, we're actually using CloudBees are paying for it. Not sure how much they know about it yet, but that's so there is probably only a matter of time before there may be a bit more urgency about how we need to find a new home. But the good news is for JX3, the images are a lot smaller, a lot less as well. So I think there is something we probably going to need to look at. Incidentally, we actually applied to go to the Docker Hub, even though we're not using it at the moment, just because if, as an open source project, they were to accept it, that would be a nice quick win. But yeah, we're certainly looking for, similar for Helm charts as well, Helm registries as well. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, well, keep everyone updated. And if you do run into any problems or come up with any magic answers or solutions here, just kind of update on the talk list so the other projects don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel and figure all this stuff out on their own.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, white papers. Tracy, this was supposed to be on the agenda last time, but we ran out of time.
I'm going to ask Fatty if he wants to update on the first one, the interoperability.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I think we are pretty close to finalize the first draft. We lack, I think, 2 sections, which we plan to finalize after this week's meeting. And then by end of November, we plan to send the draft to CDF creative team. And the target is mid-December or something like that, before Christmas holidays start, but we'll see how fast we will be with this. And the other thing is, I think we have pretty good number of case studies, and I think this beginning of this week, yesterday, Oliver contributed a case study from SAP, and that is great to see because we want to ensure we have representation from different industries. So that is great, and we are waiting a case study or 2 from Jenkins X and Tecton, and I see James Rowling is here, so another reminder. And
Noted.
yeah.
Yeah, Dan, could you go ahead and just click on the link? It's a pretty impressive set of case studies, and Fatty and the interoperability group have managed to really work together very effectively to bring all these different kind of viewpoints onto the problem together. So we've got Jenkins X and Tecton, Captain, Zool, end users like GoSpotCheck, Ericsson, SAP, and I think a couple of others in the works still, Fatih.
Yeah, I think we will probably get one from car manufacturer using a different CI/CD tool from a different foundation. So that is also great, because then we have different projects taking part in a white paper produced by CDF, which is good for visibility and also diversity.
Yeah, this is excellent. Thanks for all the hard work here. I'm excited to see the final product.
Yeah, if anyone has any comments or any contribution, just feel free to go and make your contribution before end of November, so we get your input as well. Thanks.
Target for publication mid-December, cutoff for changes. You said end of November?
Yeah.
Definitions.
Okay, so the definitions doc was actually a spin-off from that white paper where we sort of started getting into what does each term mean, and then that turned into a much bigger and wider conversation. So this document is still open, and we're still happy for people to put input into it. The current thinking here, and Christy Wilson is driving some thoughts there, is one of the things that we thought it would be useful for CDF to do, first of all, is to just capture perhaps some of the history of the terms, of where they emerge from and how they've evolved over time. So Christy Wilson, she did that talk at CDCon, kind of looking at some of that. And then the idea as a first step was to put that kind of in a reference repository under GitHub and just sort of say, okay, here's where these terms first came up, and here's how the different usage is evolving. And then use that as some of the background to, as we define these things, we talk about the historical context and where we think the future is going, and that kind of puts it in a good perspective. And also because I think these things seem to come up over and over again, and if CDF can, if we've done the work and we can be that centralized authority, then why not just make things simpler in that way? So in the meantime, yeah, if anyone wants to have a look and weigh in, check out that document. And that's all in this one. So if we go back to the other white paper.
The third one?
Yeah.
Cool. Takes me clicks to switch tabs. Sorry about that.
So this one is a much, we've sort of got the structure, but this is a focus on we're looking at talking about the why of continuous delivery. Why does it matter? Why is it important? And particularly targeting more C-suite potentially, and also people who are trying to convince leadership to invest. So developers trying to appeal to leadership, but also leadership in general having an appreciation that continuous delivery is a space worth investing in. So it's got some bits written out, but the main thing here we're looking for is review on the structure. So the first bit is, what is continuous delivery? So start off with some attempts at definition there. And then if we go down, next, a lot on the benefits. So why do it, and what are the different ways it benefits organization, processes, teams? So a lot of this will kind of just, really say why is this important for all these reasons, and what evidence do we have? So that needs to be fleshed out. Okay, so keep going. So after benefits, what it's aiming to do is then sort of say, okay, what are the different things that come together to build up to continuous delivery? And these might be the sets of practices. So again, here, and this is something it might be worth having a broader discussion at the talk level. It seemed useful to provide kind of a trail map again of sort of saying, how do you break down what are all the different things like testing and security and CI and automated deployment, and how do we give people a way to think about that like a mental image. So that's the idea behind the section, but I think this bit needs a lot of work. Then the next bit is the landscape. So once we talk about the practices, how do we connect those to the different tools? So Tracy Ragan has already led a lot of work in this place. We have the definitions. We just need to connect up how that fits it, you know, how that ties into the narrative. We have a bit on continuous delivery and open source. Like John Mark Walker of Capital One pointed out, we have this amazing data to say people who leverage open source actually there's a correlation with how often they deploy. So tying in that element of why you should be leveraging open source, or why it would be good as part of your solution. And then we're looking for case studies to talk about it in action. So we'll be tapping into members about that. So if anybody does have a case study and they want to go ahead and put that in, about the benefits, how it's made an impact, how it allows you to be agile, fill those in. And then the last section we'll be looking at is where does CDF, how can CDF help you in your adoption journey? How can it help you with resources? So as kind of your next steps, if you're convinced it's the right way to go, what are the things you can tap into to find help or resources?
So I kind of have the same comment here that from our previous discussion, which is like, this is a deeply commented upon space. And if the target is sort of C-suite or executive types, it feels like there's maybe a good opportunity here to fortify it with citations, right? We've got, you know, Martin Fowler and Jez Humble, and the whole Accelerate book covers a big piece of this. If there's a way that we could tie in the case studies that we have with supporting research that's already out there, I feel like that would really strengthen the credibility, especially if this is meant for developers to be able to pitch investment in the area at their respective companies.
Yep, no, totally agree. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Okay. Yeah, so call to action. If anybody wants to go ahead and comment on the document, please do so. If you have case studies, or if your company would like to provide kind of almost a testimony as to the benefits of continuous delivery, I think that would be well received and appreciated. So either reach out to me or go ahead and comment on the document.
Sorry, my screen froze up for a couple minutes there. It just came back.
Still frozen?
No, his whole computer is frozen. No more Dan. Yep.
See if I can find the agenda. So, and I'm going to just keep talking about that white paper a little more while Stan tries to unfreeze his screen. So I think like one of the things, the folks we have at CDF, you know, tend to be a self-selecting group of people who appreciate CI and CD and why it's important, and even understand how to implement it. But in most of the conversations, the vast majority of people don't have that appreciation. They don't have those insights, and they've often just set up some CI and they've been pretty pleased with themselves, which is great. But I think when we talk about some of these materials and the working groups and the white paper, it's just saying, okay, there's a whole set of folks out there who need help and need that support in kind of that journey. And I think that's from the CDF perspective where we can be better at broadening our audience and bringing in more people and helping them on ramp really, really quickly, and not, as the current case, I think, like to do CD well, you really have to be in it in a very specialized way. And yeah, we need to just democratize it for everybody.
I think being able to show the exact steps, people went from nothing or mostly nothing to, you know, Dora-esque levels of measurability, I think is going to be huge. There's a lot of legacy systems out there that are probably really hard to retrofit. So giving a roadmap would be super useful in that case.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. Just it's almost appreciating that it's all a different track if you're starting from scratch versus contending with something existing, and what you might need to consider if you don't have that luxury, which I think sometimes ends up being ignored with new projects or new techniques. It's always like, hey, you can just start from scratch and forget all those people dealing with the old systems, which is most of the industry. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the updates on all those white papers. We had one final thing here, I'll let them back, which is the landscape updates. I think that's just kind of our recurring reminder to look at the landscape repo, keep that up to date, merge PRs, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Looking at it now, I don't see anything open. I think Tara's been doing a great job merging things.
I've been terrible. I get in there when I can. It's just been very daunting with between work and other stuff. I would love for anyone else to come in here and help out.
Yeah, so do we need like maybe another working session on this? Because I see we've got a bunch of the issues we identified at the last one.
Yeah, I almost feel like we should just like have like a little mini hacker summit on the landscape. I have failed to organize it, but I'll at least do that. Maybe I'll just get a bunch of people, send out a call for action.
Yeah, and let me know.
I feel like I'm failing Tracy, who did all this great work to get us set up. Sorry, Tracy Ragan.
She's Tara, you can also send the note to the ambassador group, because I know there's a few folks who are interested in helping out.
Yeah, Marky and I had a couple of really great conversations early on, and then it just kind of fell apart, and I apologize for that. So that's an excellent idea.
I think Owen was interested in helping out too.
Is there an alias for all the ambassadors? I feel like I should know.
Yeah,
this.
I'll email it to you.
Thanks, Jackie. I'll have to send everybody a bottle of tequila.
I think nobody should apologize for 2020.
You get tequila added to the CDF store.
There we go.
Branded bottle.
Hey, if Tesla can do it, why can't the CDF?
I've missed this.
I'm sure there's a bunch of us who'd be glad to be tasters.
All right, well, thanks everybody. Good meeting. See everyone in 2 weeks or sooner.
I'll see Mauricio, I guess, and Tracy on Monday. Looking forward to nerding out on best practices.
Come join us here. Tara grill us about best practices.
Awesome.
All right. Bye all.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks.